Have you ever wondered why some people go to sleep perfectly fine, but never wake up? It sounds dramatic, but the truth is there are certain everyday foods that might quietly increase your risk of heart attacks, strokes, and even sudden death during sleep. And the worst part, they're in almost every kitchen. In today's video, I'm diving deep into 7 common foods that could be disrupting your sleep, triggering dangerous inflammatory reactions, and putting silent pressure on your heart, especially at night. Some of them might surprise you. Others you probably had before bed last night. This isn't fear-mongering, it's science-backed and based on real clinical findings. And once I made these changes myself, my sleep and heart health drastically improved. So stay with me till the end. And while you're here, don't forget to leave a comment below if any of these foods sound familiar in your routine. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more life-saving health content like this. Let's get into it. 7. Processed cheese/high-sodium dairy. I used to love late-night snacks, especially cheese. A couple of crackers with slices of processed cheese, or maybe a grilled cheese sandwich before bed. It felt indulgent, comforting, and harmless. Until one night, something strange happened. I woke up gasping for air. My chest felt tight, and my heart was pounding. It passed after a few minutes, but it scared me enough to start paying attention. After a few similar episodes, all following a nighttime dairy snack, I knew something was off. So I dug into the science, and what I found absolutely shocked me. Processed cheese, like the kind you find in sandwich slices or cheese spreads, is loaded with sodium, often far more than you'd expect. Some types pack up to 400 to 500 milligrams of sodium per slice, and most of us eat more than one at a time. When you eat a high-sodium snack before bed, your body starts retaining water to balance the salt levels in your blood. This process increases your blood volume, which leads to higher blood pressure and extra strain on your heart during sleep, a time when your heart should be resting. According to a study published in the journal Hypertension, elevated nighttime blood pressure is a stronger predictor of cardiovascular events than daytime pressure. That means what happens to your heart while you're asleep might matter even more than what happens when you're awake. It gets worse. High sodium intake, especially at night, can lead to something called nocturnal hypertension, blood pressure that doesn't drop while sleeping, which is what it's supposed to do. Over time, this can cause left ventricular hypertrophy, a condition where the heart muscle thickens and struggles to pump efficiently. In severe cases, the pressure can get so high it leads to breathlessness, arrhythmias, and even sudden cardiac events during sleep. In fact, there have been multiple case studies where individuals with otherwise manageable hypertension suffered sudden nocturnal death, often after a heavy meal high in salt. And it's not just the heart. Excess sodium can disrupt your breathing during sleep. 2. It contributes to fluid buildup around the neck and throat, which can worsen sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep. This not only reduces oxygen levels in the blood by up to 15%, but also puts further strain on the cardiovascular system. After learning all this, I cut out processed cheese, especially in the evening. I still enjoy dairy, but I go for low-sodium, natural options like cottage cheese or plain yogurt, and I try to finish eating at least 3 hours before bed. If you've ever experienced nighttime palpitations, waking up short of breath, or unexplained fatigue in the morning, it might not just be stress or a bad dream. Check your sodium intake, especially from hidden sources like cheese. Sometimes it's the smallest ingredients causing the biggest damage. 6. Processed meats. I used to have this habit, a small, salty snack before bed. Sometimes it was a couple slices of bacon, other times a cold salami sandwich or a few pieces of sausage. It was quick, satisfying, and gave me that cozy, treat yourself feeling before sleep. But then I read something that completely changed how I saw those midnight bites. A medical journal article casually mentioned that processed meats like sausages, bacon, and deli meats contain nitrates, which are often added to preserve the meat's color and extend shelf life. That didn't sound so bad until I kept reading. Once consumed, nitrates can convert into nitrosamines, compounds that have been strongly associated with inflammation, oxidative stress, and even DNA damage. That hit me hard. I always thought of these foods as a bit greasy, sure, but I had no idea they were biochemically aggressive, especially when consumed at night. When your body's at rest during sleep, your ability to detox and fight inflammation slows down. So if you flood your system with nitrate-heavy foods late in the day, you're basically fueling a storm of silent inflammation while your defenses are down. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine found a link between high nitrate intake and disrupted sleep architecture, including more frequent arousals and reduced REM sleep. That explained why, despite going to bed full and happy, I often woke up tired, foggy, and even anxious. But here's the part that really made me put the salami down for good. Nitrates and their byproducts are now being investigated as contributing factors in sudden cardiac death during sleep. A large epidemiological study out of Sweden found a significantly higher rate of nocturnal cardiac events in individuals with diets rich in processed meats. And it's not just about cholesterol or saturated fat. It's the nitrosamine-triggered oxidative stress that damages blood vessels and affects heart rhythm regulation while you sleep. I also came across data from the World Health Organization, which classified processed meats as Group 1 carcinogens, the same category as smoking. That's how potent the evidence is regarding their link to health risks. For me, it was never just about being healthier. It was about preventing something tragic that no one would see coming. A heart that stops beating in the middle of the night, triggered by what seemed like an innocent snack. Now, I still enjoy meat, but I opt for unprocessed cuts. Lean chicken, fresh turkey, or grilled tofu if I'm craving protein. And I make sure to finish eating at least 3 hours before bed. Sometimes it's not what we eat, but when and how often we eat it that makes all the difference. If you've been treating yourself to a late-night bacon roll, it might be time to ask if it's really worth the risk. 5. Caffeinated foods and beverages. For most of my adult life, I had a comforting routine. Dinner, a small piece of dark chocolate, and sometimes a late-night coffee if I needed to finish some work or wind down with a book. It felt harmless, even sophisticated. But what I didn't know was that this little habit was quietly wreaking havoc on my heart, especially during the night. It started with some strange symptoms. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd wake up suddenly, my heart pounding, chest tight, and sometimes even with a wave of anxiety. I thought maybe it was stress or bad dreams. But when it kept happening, I got curious. I mentioned it to my doctor, and after some discussion, she asked me one question that changed everything. Are you consuming any caffeine after dinner? That's when it clicked. I had no idea that caffeine stays in the bloodstream for 5 to 7 hours after consumption. Even if I had my coffee at 7 p.m., half of that caffeine was still active in my system by 2 a.m. According to Harvard Medical School's sleep laboratory, this lingering caffeine can cause elevated nighttime blood pressure, increase heart rate variability, and even disturb heart rhythms in older adults. And the effect is amplified in people over 65, whose bodies metabolize substances more slowly. What shocked me the most was learning that even small amounts of caffeine, like those found in a piece of dark chocolate, can trigger cardiovascular stress during sleep. Dr. Charles Schiesler, chief of sleep medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital, points out that caffeine blocks adenosine, the brain's natural sleep chemical, making your sleep lighter and your heart more active. One case that stuck with me was Meredith, a 70-year-old woman from Washington who had nearly identical symptoms to mine. She was waking up with her heart racing every night and couldn't figure out why, until her doctor traced it back to her evening chocolate. Once she cut it out, her sleep normalized and the palpitations disappeared in just a week. That hit close to home. I immediately stopped the nighttime chocolate and replaced it with a slice of banana or a cup of herbal tea like chamomile or rooibos. The change was almost instant. I started sleeping deeper, no more 3 a.m. panic wake-ups, and I genuinely felt more rested in the morning. I still enjoy my coffee, just in the morning. But after that, I draw a hard line. No caffeine after 2 p.m. If you're waking up at night and don't know why, take a look at what's on your plate or in your cup after dinner. It might not be stress. It might be the caffeine. Protect your heart while you sleep. You deserve peaceful, uninterrupted rest, not a secret struggle happening inside your chest. 4. Alcoholic beverages. A few years ago, I used to end my nights with a glass of red wine. It felt like a reward after a long day, something to relax my mind, ease into sleep, and maybe even benefit from a little resveratrol. You know, the heart-healthy compound they say is in red wine. But over time, I noticed something wasn't quite right. I'd fall asleep quickly, almost too quickly. But then, like clockwork, I'd wake up around 3 a.m. hot, restless, sometimes gasping for air, and with a racing heart. I chalked it up to stress, but deep down I knew something else was going on. Curious, I started reading and eventually came across a study published in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine. It revealed that alcohol reduces blood oxygen saturation by up to 15% during sleep, particularly in the REM stage. That hit me hard. I was literally depriving my body of oxygen every night without realizing it. But it gets worse. Alcohol is a known muscle relaxant, and that includes the muscles in your throat and airway. This is why drinking before bed increases the risk of sleep apnea, a condition where your breathing repeatedly stops and starts during sleep. In fact, one study found that people who consumed alcohol at night were 4 times more likely to experience sleep apnea events than those who didn't. And then there's the risk of stroke. According to the Stroke Association, the combination of reduced oxygen levels and interrupted sleep patterns significantly increases your risk of both ischemic and hemorrhagic stroke, especially if you already have high blood pressure or other cardiovascular risk factors. That explains so much. I was waking up not just dehydrated and groggy, but physiologically distressed. My body was working overtime just to get enough oxygen while I slept. What really changed things for me, though, was a simple at-home sleep test I did out of curiosity. I wore a pulse oximeter overnight on 2 separate nights. One after a normal, alcohol-free day, and one after 2 glasses of wine. The difference was alarming. My oxygen levels dipped as low as 89% after drinking, a number that's considered borderline dangerous, especially over several hours. So I made a choice. I didn't stop drinking altogether, but I set a strict rule. No alcohol within 4 hours of bedtime. And the difference? Immediate. My sleep became more restful. I stopped waking up in the middle of the night, and my energy during the day improved dramatically. If you're using alcohol to fall asleep, please know it's tricking you. It sedates you, but it doesn't help you rest. In fact, it silently makes your nights harder and your mornings heavier. Sometimes it's not about how much you drink, it's about when you drink. 3. Spicy foods. I've always loved spicy food. Spicy noodles, fiery curries, extra chili on everything, you name it. For years, it was a non-negotiable part of my dinner routine. It made food feel exciting and comforting at the same time. But then something strange started happening. Late at night, usually around 1 or 2 a.m., I'd wake up with this tight, burning sensation in my chest. Sometimes it felt like pressure. Other times it bordered on painful. The first time it happened, I honestly thought I was having a heart attack. My heart was racing, I was short of breath, and my chest felt heavy. A trip to the ER later, I was told it was just acid reflux. That episode was terrifying, so I started digging. Turns out, spicy foods can severely trigger acid reflux, especially when consumed close to bedtime. Capsaicin, the compound responsible for the heat in chili peppers, relaxes the lower esophageal sphincter, the valve that's supposed to keep stomach acid where it belongs. When this valve loosens, acid flows backward into the esophagus, causing that burning chest sensation we call heartburn or GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. And it's not just the acid. Spicy foods also stimulate the vagus nerve, which plays a major role in regulating your heart rate and digestion. Overstimulation of this nerve at night can lead to palpitations, erratic heartbeat, and even panic-like symptoms, all of which I was feeling but never connected to my dinner. According to a 2019 study published in the Journal of Neurogastroenterology and Motility, nighttime reflux episodes, particularly in people who consume spicy or acidic foods late in the day, can be more severe because the body is horizontal during sleep, making it easier for acid to travel up the esophagus. That constant irritation can mimic angina, chest pain caused by reduced blood flow to the heart, leading to false alarms, or worse, it can mask real cardiovascular problems. One long-term risk is Barrett's esophagus, a condition caused by chronic reflux that increases the chance of esophageal cancer. But more than that, I learned something really eye-opening. Frequent nighttime reflux can increase your risk of cardiovascular issues. The stress it places on your autonomic nervous system, along with interrupted sleep and inflammation, can all contribute to long-term heart complications. So, I made some changes. I didn't give up spicy food entirely. I just learned to enjoy it at lunch instead of dinner. I also started giving myself at least 3 to 4 hours between my last bite and bedtime. Since then, I haven't had a single episode of nighttime chest pain. If you're waking up with tightness in your chest or a racing heart, don't ignore it, and don't automatically assume it's just anxiety or stress. Sometimes it's something as simple and fixable as the spice on your plate. 2. High-sugar cereals and desserts. Used to think a bowl of cereal at night was harmless. Actually, I thought it was kind of healthy. You know, whole grains, maybe some milk, a handful of chocolate chips on top. Innocent stuff, right? But I started noticing a weird pattern. I'd wake up around 3 a.m., heart racing, slightly sweaty, and sometimes feeling anxious or even dizzy. I chalked it up to stress or nightmares, until I began tracking what I was eating at night. Almost every time I had a sweet cereal, a cookie, or a bit of ice cream before bed, I'd experience those strange wake-ups around the same time. So I did what any nerdy insomniac would do. I started digging into the science. Here's what I found out, and it blew my mind. When we eat sugary foods late at night, especially refined sugar like what's in most desserts or breakfast cereals, it causes a rapid spike in blood glucose. Our body responds with a strong release of insulin to bring that sugar level back down. But here's the kicker. That insulin can often overshoot, especially when you're not active like when you're asleep. The result? A sharp drop in blood sugar, usually around 3 a.m. That's not random. That's when your body naturally shifts deeper into the sleep cycle and is more vulnerable to glucose changes. According to a study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, nighttime hypoglycemia, aka this post-sugar crash, can trigger cortisol release, elevate heart rate, and even wake you up feeling panicked. That's exactly what I was feeling, and it doesn't stop there. This blood sugar roller coaster can stress your cardiovascular system. When your body senses low blood sugar, it kicks your sympathetic nervous system into gear, basically your fight or flight response. Your heart rate increases, blood vessels constrict, and your heart starts working overtime while you're supposed to be resting. Over time, this pressure on the heart during vulnerable hours of the night can lead to arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats, or worse, increased risk of nocturnal stroke, especially in people already predisposed to heart conditions. Some cardiologists even call this the silent storm of nighttime sugar intake. It turns out what felt like comfort food was putting my heart at risk, quietly, invisibly, every night. Now, I avoid anything sugary 2 to 3 hours before bed. I swap my cereal bowl for a calming herbal tea or a protein-rich snack like Greek yogurt with chia seeds, no added sugar. The difference in my sleep quality and how my body feels when I wake up is night and day. If you've been waking up randomly in the middle of the night or struggling with anxiety during sleep, don't just blame stress. Check your sugar. Sometimes the sweetest habits are the most silently dangerous. 1. High-fat fried foods. I used to love ending my day with something crispy, whether it was fried chicken leftovers from dinner, a few fries, or even some deep-fried snacks. It was comforting, satisfying, and honestly felt harmless. I never thought something so common could be dangerous. But that changed after a late-night trip to the ER opened my eyes. And after I started digging into the science behind it, what I learned shocked me. High-fat fried foods can increase inflammatory markers in your body by up to 25% during sleep. That's according to research from the Cleveland Clinic, one of the most respected cardiovascular institutions in the world. It turns out that the very foods many of us enjoy before bed are setting us up for a silent cardiovascular storm. Let me explain how. When we consume deep-fried foods, especially at night, our body is hit with a lipid surge, a rapid spike in unhealthy fats entering the bloodstream. Dr. Stephen Neeson, chairman of cardiovascular medicine at Cleveland Clinic, describes how this triggers an inflammatory response that peaks while we sleep, precisely when our body's anti-inflammatory defenses are naturally at their lowest. In simpler terms, fried foods basically ignite a fire in your bloodstream, just as your body is trying to wind down and recover. The inflammation can increase the risk of plaque rupture, blood clotting, and even heart attacks during deep sleep, when your body should be at its most relaxed. I remember reading about a 69-year-old man named Gregory, a seemingly healthy retiree from Texas. No major health issues, walked daily, had regular checkups. One night, after eating fried chicken for dinner, he suffered a heart attack in his sleep. Doctors found that his meal had triggered a cascade of inflammation during the deepest phase of his sleep, the very moment his body should have been repairing itself. That story stuck with me. I realized I was doing the same thing Gregory did, unknowingly putting my heart under attack every night. After that, I made a change. Now, instead of fried foods, I opt for baked or steamed dinners in the evening. If I still crave something crunchy, I go for air-popped popcorn with minimal salt. A small choice, but one that gives me peace of mind. If you're over 65, or even approaching it, please take this seriously. Our bodies process fat differently as we age. What seemed harmless in our 30s or 40s can become life-threatening after 60. Your heart deserves a calm, stable night to rest and recover, not a war zone caused by what you have for dinner. You don't have to give up comfort food completely. But trust me, save the fried chicken for lunch, not for bedtime. So, now you know. These 7 everyday foods might seem harmless, but when consumed at the wrong time, especially before bed, they could quietly put your heart under immense stress while you sleep. Now I'd love to hear from you. Back in the next morning, right? Have you ever experienced heart palpitations, insomnia, or even nightmares after eating certain foods at night? Back in the next morning, right? Were you surprised by any of the items on this list? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Your experience might help someone else stay safe. And if you found this video helpful or eye-opening, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss future videos on how to optimize your health naturally and intelligently. Thanks for watching. Take care of your heart, even while you sleep. See you in the next one.